Okay, so we're going to make a beginner's mixed grain sourdough sandwich bread. And the thing about the mixed grain is we're using freshly milled whole wheat grain. Um, so we start off with, I've softened the butter, and the instructions say just to mix all the ingredients together. And we're going to use our bread hook, our dough hook, to mix our dough up. Um, so the butter's soft, so it's not going to be hard for it to mix in with the other ingredients. And then we're gonna take and measure a tablespoon of honey. This is local honey. Um, we got it. We went to a farmer's market recently and got some local honey. It's blossom wood honey. Um, so that's about a tablespoon that I'm going to measure in there. And then I've already measured out 1 1/4 cups of water. So I'm going to go ahead and add the water in. And then I need half a tablespoon. Sorry, I think that was my honey falling off. Half a tablespoon of salt. Make sure that's right, because that seems like a lot of salt, but it is. That's what it says. Half a tablespoon of salt. So we're going to add that in. And then I've already got my half a cup of active sourdough starter. I started with it in the bowl. Then we're going to use, I milled my freshly ground wheat. And I wanted to show you what these wheat berries look like before they're milled. And we use the Mock Mill 100 to measure our wheat. Now I'm going to add this in at the very end. Actually, I'm ready to do that. So we're going to add the whole grain in first. And then I'm going to go ahead and let my mixer mix for just a little bit. And then I need 3 cups of all-purpose flour. So we're going to measure out 3 cups of all-purpose flour. Let me get my scoop here. And I'm going to add this last bit of flour in slower, because we're going to see how hydrated our dough is when we get started with that. I'm going to turn that up just for a little bit. Let me check. Okay, I need about another cup. And I may or may not add all of this flour in. We'll just see how wet the dough is. Okay, all right. I'm going to use my scoop. Got about 3 cups in here. Turn this off for just a minute and raise it up. And I want to push the flour down in there. I've got some butter that's kind of to the side, so I'm going to push that on down in there so it gets all mixed in really well. This is going to be a sandwich loaf versus the round buell loaf. And so what we're gonna do is once we get this to the consistency we want, we're gonna let it knead the dough, because we're using our dough hook. We're gonna let it knead the dough for about 10 minutes. And then we'll check it for the window pane test that we've done before. Okay, so first I want to say we've let this mix for 10 minutes, and it pulled away from the sides of the bowl. And when it would look like it was sticking to the bottom of the bowl again, I would add a little bit more flour. So I added flour until it was just pulling away from the side of the bowl and it wasn't sticking to the bottom anymore. And it took about 10 minutes to knead it. And if we pick this up, take this off, gonna just pull some of this out so we can look at the window pane test. And I also want to say, I'm just learning how to make sourdough, right? So I am by no means like a professional at this. So you're just coming along with me on my sourdough journey, basically. But we can pull this, and you can see that it's not pulling apart. We've developed enough gluten, and the protein helps the gluten until I can see light through that. And so that's what they call the window pane test. And it didn't pull apart, it didn't get holes in it. And so that means my bread is ready. So what I'm going to do now is I got to take my little dough hook out so I can get my bread out of my bowl. And I have used olive oil in the bottom. I've just spread olive oil in this bowl, and I'm going to put my dough ball into my bowl, and then I'm just going to cover it and let it bulk ferment. And this is the sandwich. This is sandwich bread, okay? And it's going to bulk ferment for like 10 to 12 hours. So I'm going to cover this up, and in the morning when I get up, I'm going to check it and see how much it's doubled, and then I will get ready to let it do a second rise in a warm spot, but that will be in the bread pans. Okay, so we have our beginner's mixed grain sourdough, and I'm uncovering it this morning. You can see how nice and risen it looks. Um, and so I've got a little bit of flour on my surface, and I'm gonna take this out. You'll notice that it deflates when you go to pull it out. And then we're going to I'm going to make this more into a rectangle here. And I'm going to take my rolling pin. I'm going to add a little bit of flour to it. And so what we're going to do with this bread, this is a little different because this is my sandwich bread, right? And so I am going to just roll it out until I get a nice rectangle. I want it to be probably about 1/4 of an inch tall. So I'm going to roll that out, and it's not pulling back. It's not bouncing back a whole lot, so I know that it's ready to be worked with. I don't need to let it rest. Sometimes if your dough bounces back a lot, you will want to let it rest, and then after it's rested for a little bit on the counter, it won't bounce. It won't pull back. I'm going to roll from the center. And so now I've got it about the thickness that I want it. I'm going to take my bread, and I'm just going to roll it up into basically a log, right? I'm going to roll that kind of tight. I'm going to tuck the ends under to make it so it will fit into my pan that I've already sprayed. And I just sprayed this with Pam. You could spray it with olive oil or avocado oil if you like. Then I'm going to take my parchment paper. I'm going to press it down into my bread pan. I like to put the pan down, and because it helps the parchment paper stick into the bottom of the pan. It helps it stay down in there while I get my dough. I pick my dough up. Oh, I got to tuck it. Look, I didn't do that. You got to kind of tuck that in so that it holds together. Squeeze that together, and then tuck those ends. And then that tuck is going to be on the bottom. I'm going to set that down into my bread pan. I'm going to cover this with a tea towel. And I'm going to let it set for about 2 to 4 hours in the kitchen. I'm looking for it to basically double in size. And then I'm going to put it in the oven. So we'll be back and see how much it's grown. So our beginner's mixed grain sandwich bread has doubled in size. And the last step that we're going to do is to make an egg wash to coat the top of it. The egg wash gives it a golden color, like when you see excuse me, bread made at like store-bought bread, got that golden color. It's probably had some type of egg wash on it. So we've got this little egg. See my little egg? We believe this is one of our new chicken's first eggs that we're going to use to make the egg wash. Look how cute! It's so cute. Look how and look how yellow. Look how yellow the yolk is. So I'm going to take that and just mix up the egg. So this is definitely going to have a golden color to it when we put that on the bread. I'm going to try to get that mixed. I guess this is silly. I probably need to use a fork. Sometimes I don't like to dirty up things, and so I'll just use whatever I started with. But I'm going to go ahead and use a fork here. For my egg wash. Now the egg wash is a tablespoon of water and then 1 egg. And I decided to use that little egg because there's always egg wash left over. And so I'm also going to use this egg wash not only for my bread here, but we have some whole wheat rolls that we're making, and so I'm going to use egg wash on those whole wheat rolls as well. So you're just going to brush it over a lot, very gently. Do a light wash, and you can tell when after it gets finished baking, you can tell where you didn't put egg wash. So, hey, so that's the egg wash, and we're going to put it in the oven, and when it comes out, we'll see what it looks like. All right, so the timer just went off. The bread has been in the oven for about 45 minutes, and we baked it at 375. So let's see what it looks like. Ooh, look at that. Woo. Okay, so, oh, oops, oops, that looks really good. Now, I think this is where I had maybe a little bit of darker egg wash there. I am going to take out my cooling rack, or maybe, yeah, I got to get my cooling rack right now. There's pies on the cooling rack. Hold on. Okay, all right, so I'm going to take the cooling rack and just lift the bread out of the pan and set it on the cooling rack. And you can see here, ooh, that smells like fresh. I mean, it smells like fresh grain. It smells really good. I don't know how to describe it, except maybe it's kind of smells really good. It smells like good fresh bread. But we're going to let it cool. I do need to take the temperature of the bread. Ooh, it's got a little hard on top. It's over 200. Okay, so we've got a good firm crust on the outside, and then it feels a little bit more tender down at the bottom. I want to flip it over. Well, I'm going to leave it like that. We're going to let it cool before we cut into it. Now, this bread was made with freshly milled flour, and it was hard wheat. It was red. It was red, hard wheat, and it is a beginner mixed grain. So there's a mixture of the hard red wheat and all-purpose flour here.